All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm here with my co-host, Matt.
What's up, guys?
Thank you guys for joining us again, and don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're continuing with us through the AFC West here, we appreciate your viewership and hope you continue to stick with us all the way through our 32-part team series here, breaking down each team's offseason moves and breaking it down from a fantasy football perspective here. So with no further ado, we're going to get into our second AFC West team here, and we'll be looking at the Chargers. So I'll throw it over to Matt.
Chargers, baby. Should have worn my jersey.
I know we should have.
Five.
Both Charger fans here for anybody
Yeah,
who's not aware.
excited for this one. I've never been so happy for my team to finish in last place and fire their coach. I think every move they made during the offseason was great, starting at the top with Harbaugh. I mean, that was just, they really hit it out of the park. I mean, he did what he set out to do at Michigan and won the national championship. And, I truly believe if they had lost that game, maybe they wouldn't be able to peel him away from that, but that's neither here nor there. Um, and just looking at the draft that they had a plan and they stuck to it. I know you and I went back and forth for a long time discussing kind of their needs in the draft, and they got the blue chip tackle prospect. They got a wide receiver that's an excellent route runner that probably should have been, a first round pick. And, a lot of us kind of wanted Neighbors, but looking back on it, it's much better to have Alton McConkey than Neighbors and the tackle that would have been available, just seeing how
Tackle
tackles.
10 in the draft, yeah, or
Yeah,
later.
so it was such a good draft. And then just to touch on Junior Colson in the third round, the fact that he was there is just sort of a state of the linebacker position and how it's being viewed now. But he could be a green dot guy on the team maybe year one. Like, he knows the defense. He's an excellent player. He's a good leader. Another guy I like late, Brendan Rice. We'll see if he makes the team, but he fell quite a bit too. He's obviously got the bloodline to fall back on. He's a really hard worker. I really enjoyed him watching him at USC. He's got some things to maybe clean up a little bit, but he's a big receiver, and things don't work out with Quentin Johnston or however that kind of unfolds. I do like him. And on the negative side, we got rid of Keenan, we got rid of Mike Williams, Eckler's gone. So, a lot of that was obviously dollar related, but they're really starting from scratch and kind of rebuilding their identity and saying, you're going to have to hit us in the mouth for 60 minutes and we're going to hit you even harder. So I'm super excited. And it kind of feels like they're the second best team in the AFC West now. Maybe I'm just
God, they better
biased,
be.
but yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think the Harbaugh hire was, like you said, I'm glad you led with that, because that was so critical, in my opinion, to changing the narrative of the Chargers just in general this whole offseason. It was going to be, I can't believe you drafted Quentin Johnston. You guys went 5-12 with Herbert, right? Like you if they had stuck with Staley, unfortunately, like I still just don't hate Staley. I think he just ended up not being ready to be a head coach yet, and that's unfortunate for him. But getting Harbaugh in there, I think, completely changed the discussion around the Chargers. It was like, what's Harbaugh going to do? How is he going to build the team? He wants to build in the trenches. He's a running game, like you said, hard-nosed football. Like he's going to change the identity, and I think even in just this first offseason, he started to show that. And I think sticking to the plan of building in the trenches and picking Joe Alt, despite the position issues. I mean, I think a lot of people that talk about draft analysis say, why are you taking a big time left tackle when, you're going to immediately move him over to the right because you have Slater. But I think he's going to be able to do it. As a sophomore at Notre Dame, he played right tackle. So I think, he's got a shot to be really good over there. And if he is, and they are able to run the ball, and then with Greg Roman's offense, they went and got Gus Edwards, they went and got JK Dobbins, both guys that have played long time in Roman's offense. So I think that they're expecting to be able to run the ball and run the ball successfully early. So unfortunately, getting into the fantasy aspect of that, you've got three people there now. in the backfield. You got Dobbins, who, is very unsure health-wise. If he's able to hold up, I think obviously he's going to be the best of the bunch. But my hesitation is I think that maybe they used him a little bit as a change of pace to Gus Edwards, and that they have Gus Edwards handle the majority of the carries. They have him running between the tackles, and they use Dobbins more like Gibbs was used kind of at the beginning of last year, where it was like, why is he only getting 7 touches? Why is he only getting 10 touches? Let's get Gibbs some more touches. But I think Dobbins might be that the entire year for this offense, because they're trying to keep him healthy and they're trying to make sure that he's going to play. And then they have Vidal, who they drafted, and he was very productive in a small, non-Power 5 school. So maybe he gets on the field, but I think he's going to need an injury, which, with Dobbins in front of him, that's not really saying much. But I think he's going to need an injury in order to get on the field. So that's my breakdown of the line, building in the trenches. And obviously we haven't hit on Herbert or the new weapons yet. But I think that the change in identity is going to make it okay that they lost Keenan and they lost Mike Williams. I think, obviously losing a receiver like Keenan is never going to be easy. I mean, he's arguably the best route runner in the league, always open, very, very productive, go-to guy on third down. Like, those are things that they're going to have to iron out in camp if they're going to be successful, because his role is so important. But they picked a very natural replacement in Lad McConkey, which is why I'm actually very happy that they went alt and they were still able to get McConkey. As soon as they picked alt at 5, I was like, their target now is McConkey with their second round pick. Like, they either are going to lean all in on this line, this line narrative and pick another lineman, or they got to figure out a way to get Lad McConkey, because he is the most natural replacement for Keenan, and he's got significantly more speed. So if his game translates from Georgia into the Chargers offense, I'm obviously very, very hopeful as a fan, right? So I'm going to be biased towards wanting McConkey to succeed, but I've already seen him in early drafts going, in the 10th, 11th, sometimes in the 12th round of mocks. And it's just like that he's going to be the number 1 receiver. There's no reason that he's going that late. I think he should get moved up. I think he should be around 30. And, I think he has a chance with Herbert to be a very productive receiver this year.
Yeah, I'm going to be all in on Lad this year. I mean, just what you said in terms of route running and, kind of that Keenan replacement. And if you look at the Jim Harbaugh offense at Michigan, it's run, but who was the route runner getting open? It was Roman Wilson. Third down, whatever that might be, that's going to be Lad's role. And Lad's, in my opinion, a better player than Roman Wilson. And so, whether it's half PPR, full PPR, I think he's going to go way up. But I think he's in a really good spot. Touching on the other receivers, we've kind of seen what Palmer is. Like, he's been thrust into the number 2 role. He's been thrust into the number 1 role due to injuries. He's not really someone that excites me. Quentin Johnston's pushed down. I think he's number 65 on Fantasy Pros. In my opinion, if you want to take a shot on him just based on the draft profile, based on the new coaching change, it's really basically a new environment for him. And the role that they had him do was not his role. They just saw a big bodied receiver and said, oh, he's just going to replace Mike Williams. But they're completely different players, completely different, route scenarios. So I'm hoping that now that we have, a better coaching regime, that they'll kind of figure that out. But on the flip side, if he's dropping balls, they're not going to play him. Like, that's not really going to fly in this offense. So I'm totally fine with someone saying like, hey, I want to take a shot at that late. But yeah, he does still scare me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not really that interested in Quentin Johnston from a fantasy perspective. From a Chargers perspective, as a fan, I still have hope for him, and I'll get into why. But in terms of even his target share, you're just going to look at where is his production going to come from as the number 3 at best option. I'm just not sure he's going to exceed 5 targets a game. And if you're not going to, if you're going to be around 4.5, 5 targets a game, that's not going to be enough to be any sort of relevant fantasy player. So, like, for me, I'd rather take a shot on a backup running back at that point. I don't know exactly where Rico Dowdle's going or where Zeke's going, right? Like, a running back in Dallas, you don't know exactly how that's going to shake out. I'd rather throw a dart there. Maybe on a young player like Dontavian Wicks for the Packers, more exciting offense, and showed a lot more promise than than QJ last year.
Mhm.
I just, I just feel like there's a lot of players. And again, I don't have like who's exactly going right around QJ. It just feels like 65 wide receiver, you're really pushing the end of the draft at that point.
Yeah.
And in Superflex too, like I'm taking a shot on a fourth quarterback. If there's one there instead, I mean, look at last year from a Superflex perspective, CJ Stroud was a 16th round, 15th round pick last year. I mean, maybe in 12 team Superflex, he gets pushed up, but, he was ranked like 28 amongst quarterbacks last year. That's how you win in Superflex, is you just have to take a shot on guys and see how they look in week one. And even after week one between Stroud and Young, you could have known that Stroud was going to be the better player, like even after week one.
Right.
So from fantasy perspective, so I'm going that way over drafting Quentin Johnston. He won't be on any of my teams. The reason I'm excited about him from a real life perspective is I think he was drafted as a project, and from a developmental angle, I really hope that this new regime is going to play him in his strengths and is going to continue to develop him with what he really needs to be working on. At TCU, all he was a right receiver running in breaking routes. He's really good at post. He's really good at the dig route. He's very good at catching balls as he's coming back towards the quarterback. And then he uses his athleticism after that to rack up his massive totals that he dropped in college. Now, we've all seen everything else. Anything that's on the left side of the field breaking right, when he has to catch it with his left hand predominantly, he's not very good at. Anything that's over the shoulder, over his head, he's not very good at. And so I'm hoping that they put him they stick him on the right side of the field, and they just teach him how to catch a go route over the shoulder, right? That's going to be the main point that they work on with him, and that they send him mostly on in breaking routes that he's able to win. So that's why I'm hopeful as a Charger fan that as a number 3 role playing on the right side, you got Palmer on the outside. I think he's good enough. And McConkey, who's going to be the one moving the chains anyways, because they're going to be run. And that McConkey's going to be racking up targets. And I think too, like McConkey is not siloed to the slot either. I think in 2 wide receiver sets, if they run double tight end or they have 2 running backs on the field, if they're in 12 or 13 personnel, that they're going to have McConkey on the outside and QJ is going to sit. So that's also why I'm afraid that QJ isn't going to rack up more than 50 to 60% target share. Another reason why I'm not interested in trying to go after him.
Yeah, there's no way they're going to take McConkey off the field. I mean, he's already their best receiver. We've seen he can play outside. I know he kind of got thrown into that white guy slot role in college.
I mean, he played 80%. He did play 80% on the outside, even in college. So like he did play on the inside, and he is a natural fit because of how good he is of a route runner on the inside. He's good on the option routes. He's going to be really good on third down. He's going to play inside on third down. But in terms of his speed, he still runs a 4.39. So it's not like he's unable to get deep on players. So, I think that also helps his route running to get open because they have to honor the speed and not get burned deep.
Okay. And then last point before we go over to Justin Herbert, how are you viewing Vidal? Because I can imagine he's going to be a pretty popular handcuff pick late in drafts. I mean, the 2 guys in front of him do not have a history of staying healthy. And if he's the starter, then, he's in a really, really good spot. Are you looking at him late in drafts at all? Or are you kind of waiting to see how things play out?
No, not interested in Vidal at all. I like to take shots early on guys that I think are going to play. And I just don't see a way that he gets on the field right away. If we hear camp reports that he's looking good and he's going to overtake Gus, who they went out and signed in free agency, then, I might change my tune on that. But as of right now, like if I was even in best ball drafts, I'm not even interested in drafting him in best ball. I just don't see a way that he ends up as the full-time starter. I genuinely think that if Gus were to get hurt, that they'd go out and sign somebody instead of hand over the keys to Vidal. And again, that's something I could be wrong on, but I don't see it. This was a weak running back class. It felt like they had to fill out that room. Might as well take a shot on a guy that they clearly had scouted and liked. see what he can do. He was very productive in college, but I have a feeling that Vidal is more or is closer to a player who's going to end up out of the league in a year or two than he is to ever taking over as the starter for the Chargers.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, this would be a completely different conversation if this was like Jonathan Brooks, I guess, for example. So I see
Jonathan Brooks, if he was in this situation, would be a 6th round pick probably. Like he might already get pushed up into the 9-10 round on Carolina. So if he was running behind this line in this offense with Harbaugh and proved any sort of health, I mean, he could, if the Chargers had ended up with Brooks, that could have been somebody that we're looking at as a top 10 running back by the time we get to the end of the year. So, that's totally different conversation to me, but with Vidal, the player I don't think is good enough necessarily to stay and stick as a starter for any sort of period of time.
Cool. Lastly, Justin Herbert. So he is currently ranked number 14, which in my opinion is why one quarterback leagues are just not as fun, because he's just not a guy that should be on benches and not starting every week. Why don't you give your outlook for him this year? He finished as number 17 last year, obviously missed the last, I want to say 4 games. What do you think?
I couldn't agree with you more on what you just said. The fact that Justin Herbert is ranked at quarterback 14 and would not be drafted necessarily in 10-team standard leagues is something that, if that doesn't open the door to you being open to moving to a Superflex league, especially in 10-team leagues, I'm not sure what would. I mean, these guys are very fun to watch. These guys are very fun to root for all the way down. I mean, you got Kirk Cousins, who just signed a massive deal in Atlanta, has awesome weapons going 18. You got Aaron Rodgers, who's coming back from an injury, but has awesome weapons and a good offense going 20. Deshaun Watson, I know he struggled, but he's down in the 20s. Even Derek Carr, somebody who is consistently good, down at 25. But the reason he's 25 in these rankings is because nobody cares about quarterback 17 in standard leagues. He gets pushed up because he's consistent. He always finishes as quarterback 18, and there's value in having that on your team, or quarterback 20. There's value in having a guy that's consistently able to produce, and like he gets ranked behind Will Levis, obviously, because Will Levis is young, might have more upside or something. But like, if you're drafting somebody that you need to start, there's no way you're going to draft Levis over Derek Carr. Nobody's going to make that decision. So anyways, that's an aside on the quarterbacks, circling it all the way back to Justin Herbert. It's funny to look at it from a 2 quarterback perspective, because quarterback 14 is still a very good pick, and probably a 6th, 7th round pick, something like that. And, drafting with a bunch of Chargers fans in our league, we're probably going to see that get pushed up because he's behind Purdy, he's behind Jordan Love, he's behind Kyler Murray, he's behind Tua, he's behind Caleb Williams. Like, I think that there's a very good argument to have him up in the 8, 9, 10 region, like maybe behind Dak Prescott, in front of Kyler Murray. So, and, I think the offense changing is going to impact Herbert's numbers negatively, but you also have to remember that they're going to have better weapons and the offense is going to run more efficiently than it did last year. So I think with McConkey being able to assume that number 1 role and the offense overall being able to stay on the field more often, I think that there's a good case for Herbert to say that he still should be up in that maybe 2nd tier, maybe beginning of the 3rd tier type of quarterback.
Yeah, and not to mention they've got 2 incredible tackles now that they've signed Alt. So he's going to be upright. The offense is going to be more efficient, like you said. I feel like people are just reading too much into the narrative about them running the ball. It's not like they're playing against a crappy college team where you can just run it 30 times. Like, they have to throw. They want to throw. They're gonna throw.
Yeah.
And I can't stop drafting Herbert in best ball right now just because that value is insane in my opinion. So yeah, I'm really excited about him. I think there will be fewer turnovers too, just the way that this offense is going to be designed. But yeah, man, any last thoughts on the Chargers?
Go Chargers, man. I really hope that they make a run at the Chiefs this year. I hope they take one of the 2 games against them. And, I know they're at 5-12, but like Keenan didn't play for 4 of the games, their number 1 option. Herbert got hurt early in one of the games and then missed 4 additional games on top of that. Like, they didn't win any of those games at the end of the year. I think that it's a lot to ask to have a 5-12 team turn around to like an 11-6 or a 12-5 team, but I think that the Chargers have that potential here now. So I really hope to see them succeed this year. And I want as much of the Chargers playmakers as I can get outside of the, kind of true backups here. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, with that, if you're still with us, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't go check out the Lad McConkey content from earlier in the off season. And we'll see you guys for AFC team number 3 tomorrow. Have a good one.
Later.